Good day and welcome to the dialogue on clean energy potential for Southeast Asia, a civil society perspective. My name is Nitin Esudurai. I am Regional Coordinator of Climate Action Network Southeast Asia and President of the Environmental Protection Society Malaysia. I will be your moderator for this session. This dialogue is organized by Climate Action Network Southeast Asia in partnership with our member organization, the Malaysian Climate Change Group. This event is part of the Climate Action Forum of IGEM, which is the International Green Tech and Eco Products Exhibition and Conference Malaysia. IGEM is organized by the Malaysian Green Technology Corporation and Climate Change Center, an agency within the Ministry of Environment and Water. We thank them for the opportunity to hold our event in conjunction with their major event. As our overall theme assigned to us is Climate Action Forum, this particular event or this particular forum is on energy. And we have chosen energy because it is the big ticket item when it comes to addressing climate change. It is for this reason that we are focusing on this topic and on Southeast Asia. Let us share an analysis on Southeast Asia by the International Energy Agency. It says, Southeast Asia has experienced about the fastest growth in electricity demand in the world, an average of 6% per year. Its overall energy demand has grown by more than 80% since 2000. The lion's share of this growth has been met by a doubling in fossil fuel use. Of the fossil fuels, coal has been the fastest growing item, largely for power generation. Oil is still the largest element in the regional energy mix. The conclusion is that with energy demand increasing further, the trend of rising emissions from fossil fuels will continue unless countermeasures are taken. A review of countries in the region show a continuing reliance on fossil fuels and an uptake in coal in general. This is worrying. We are here to present the countermeasures of the potential for clean energy. And when I say clean energy, it encompasses conservation, reducing consumption, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. In the US presidential debate, which was just held a few hours ago between President Trump and former Vice President Biden, Biden said the fastest growing job sector in the United States at present is in solar and wind, with high paying jobs to match. So to discuss this issue of clean energy, we have a stellar panel with hands-on experience in transitioning away from fossil fuels in the energy supply chain with the broad aspects of clean energy. So it's transitioning, we're experts in transitioning to clean energy. In terms of the format which we will follow, we will have the 5 presenters go one by one uninterrupted, and then have the question and answer session once they have all finished. You can use the questions window to ask your questions. The lineup will be as follows. We will have Srinivas Krishnasamy, Gurumit Singh, Dicky Edwin Hindato, Ray Panaligan, and T. Khan speaking in that sequence. And I will introduce them one by one. So our first speaker will be touching on the topic of India's transition to renewable energy, lessons for Southeast Asia. So you might say that India is actually not part of Southeast Asia, yet it's very interesting that India is moving actively towards renewable energy based on hard economic sense. And we are very fortunate, so interesting to see what lessons we can learn from India on transitioning to clean energy. And we are very fortunate to have with us here the Chief Executive Officer for Vasudha Foundation, Srinivas Krishnasamy. And one thing I'd like to say is that Vasudha Foundation has been helping state governments in India with preparing their institutional strengthening plan of the state climate action plans. And one of them is actually already being implemented in the state of Madhya Pradesh in India. So with that introduction, over to you, Srini, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Niti, and very good morning and good afternoon all. I will, without much ado, start my presentation, which, as Niti said, is on the energy transition. Are you able to see my screen? Yeah, so energy transition in India, a snapshot. As Niti said, not very long ago, and even now, India was known to be a very large consumer of coal and was known to set up a lot of coal-fired power plants. However, things changed fairly dramatically in the last 5 to 6 years, where India started embarking on a very ambitious renewable energy pathway. We have still got miles and miles to go, but we have made the beginning. And I'll just give you a snapshot of where we are and what the journey has been like. Now, let me sort of step back and then talk in terms of what India's NDCs, the nationally determined contribution for the period of 2020 to 2030, that was submitted on the 2nd October 2015 to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change broadly talks about. So I'm not getting into the broad details, but I'll just list out the 3 broad targets that have some reference to today's meeting. So one is, it said it would achieve a 40% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel resources by 2030. Second, it talked of a reduction in emission intensity to GDP target of 30 to 35% by 2030 to 2005 levels. And the third, which has also got a mitigation perspective, but it's got to do more with forests, talks of a creation of additional carbon sinks by 2.5 billion to 3 billion tons through creation of additional forests and tree covers. Now, further, what it also said, and this is part of its NDC, part of the 40% non-fossil fuel installed capacity by 2030, India also committed to achieve 175 gigawatts of renewable energy installed capacity by 2022. Now, having said that, where are we so far? So there is a platform of civil society groups called the GHG Platform India, which comprises of about 6 odd civil society groups led by us versus our foundation. And the purpose of setting up the platform primarily was to estimate GHG emissions for India. And we have done it so far for the period of 2005 to 2015. And going forward, we plan to do it till 2018, 2019 in the coming few months. I won't get into the details. I presume that this graph is self-explanatory. But if you can see, the energy and the industry are the key emitter sectors for India. And you can see that the energy share is roughly about 50-odd%. So let me go further and look at the energy sector, because that's what we are interested in today. Now, if you look at the energy sector emissions, the public electricity generation, which is the blue, is the largest contributor to emissions in India so far, for the period of 2005 to 2015, and it contributes to almost 51.5% of the total energy emissions. Now, this public electricity generation is largely coal, so it's coal dominated. And then you also have other contributors such as transportation. You have LPG, which is for the liquefied petroleum gas, which is for cooking, and so on and so forth. And then you also have the industrial energy. But they are all fairly minuscule when compared to the public electricity generation, which basically means, to cut the long story short, which basically means that coal has been the dominant factor in our electricity generation installed capacity mix. So therefore, India's NDC becomes important from that context. Now, let's look at the current status of the India's power sector as on date. This, I thought, is just to give you a snapshot, but then you will see that we have a total installed capacity of 370 gigawatts. This is important because maybe it will go up to 400 by 2030. If you're saying 40% of 400 gigawatts will have to be non-fossil fuel, you can do the maths. So you see that many gigawatts needs to be yeah, of non-fossil fuel. And then the generation is also important. We are right now having about 1,385 billion units of overall generation. The current installed capacity, this number has gone up. This is as on March. As on September, it's about 88 gigawatts. And then we are looking at total. But if you also include hydro, then it works up to 132.72 gigawatts because a lot of countries tend to include hydro as also renewables. So this is just to give you a snapshot. Earlier, the major problem that India had for renewable energy uptake was poor transmission infrastructure, and now that is also being addressed in a big way. Now, coming to the NDC targets, where are we right now? The status, the report card, so to speak. So as of 31st August 2020, we have already touched 38% of non-fossil fuel in our installed capacity. So we basically making a beginning to shift gradually from coal to non-fossil, from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel. Unfortunately, this also includes nuclear, but then we will the next slides will sort of show you how renewable energy has progressed. In the next slide, when you look at the 175 gigawatt target by 2022, we have already achieved 89 gigawatts, and there is another pipeline of about 88 gigawatts are in the pipeline. Sorry, 178 gigawatts in the pipeline. So, we have about 90 gigawatts in the pipeline. And what we expect is that by 2022, we should cross the 175 gigawatts and look at reaching 178 gigawatts. But what we hear from Government of India sources is that it could even touch 220 gigawatts, which means far surpassing the 175 gigawatts. Nevertheless, even if you discount what they are saying, if you look at what is in the pipeline, what has been commissioned, what's been tendered, and so on, we believe that 175 gigawatts should definitely be achieved by 2022. Now, we also have a 2030 target, and the 2030 target proposes 435 gigawatts of renewable energy alone by 2030, which includes solar, wind, small hydro, and biomass. And out of this 435 gigawatts by 2030, the target for solar alone is about 300 gigawatts. This is by 2030. So if this target of 435 gigawatts by 2030 is achieved, we believe that our non-fossil fuel share in the energy mix could go up to 64%. And again, let me remind you that our NDC talks of 40%, but if this target is achieved, we could go up to 64%. So that's where it is. Now, again, it's always good to corroborate to see how things are on the ground. Are we really there, or is it just figures floating in the air? So we looked at the pipeline of coal-fired power projects to see how many power projects are in the pipeline, have applied for permissions to set up power plants. And we realized that in 2019, while there were about something like 21 gigawatts that are applied for permission, in 2020, it completely plummeted to 3.2 gigawatts. And even on this 3.2 gigawatts, a lot of them are being shelved. So that's the story so far. Now, why is that so? Niti said in his opening comments that finance is the key. So if you actually look at the electricity tariff trends, you will see, now let's look at solar. You will see solar in about 2015 was about 4 rupees and has come down to 2 rupees 50 paisa. But if I go back in date, if I say 2009-10, solar was about 12 rupees somewhere here, and it fell down to 2 rupees. It's dropped to 2 rupees 50 paisa, which is which is really low. And if you look at coal has been hovering in the region of about 4 rupees to about 3 rupees 72 paisa, which is still almost a rupee and a half costlier than solar. Wind, hydro has been in the region of about 3 rupees 53 paisa to about 2 rupees 72 paisa, again less than the coal. And if you look at wind has come down from 4 rupees 11 paisa to 2 rupees 95 paisa. So the story here is that hydro, solar, and wind are far more cheaper than the coal. And the prices for solar has dropped. Well, this is not dramatic because we were only looking at from 2015 16 to 2019 20. If you actually look at 2010 11 or 2011 12, the fall has been fairly dramatic from almost 12 rupees a kilowatt hour, falling down to 2 rupees 50 paisa kilowatt hour. So this shows, because of this, the story here is a lot of financiers are not willing to support coal anymore. Earlier, there was a reluctance to fund for solar projects. Now, solar, wind, biomass, the renewable energy projects have become more bankable than the fossil fuel projects, particularly coal. That's the story as far as the finance sector is concerned. Now, if you look at the electricity generation mix, you can see how it is slowly reduced. 77. This is the generation, not the installed capacity, but in terms of generation. Installed capacity may be good, but I think even the generation is important. So from 77%, the share of coal in the electricity generation, that is measured in billion units or billion kilowatt hours, has come down to 66%. And if the target of 435 gigawatts by 2030 is achieved, then this could come down to about 45-50%, which is a big shift from fossil fuel to renewables. So there's other drivers. So one of the drivers is the finance, but there is also the other drivers. And the other driver primarily, which I will very briefly touch upon, is on this whole issue of air quality. Many of you know that in the various WHO reports on air quality that has been released from time to time the last few years, India tops the countries in poor air quality, and the maximum number of countries that have been listed with poor air quality index are within the country. So what we wanted to look at is we just wanted to do a quick comparison of March 19 to March 2020. The reason why we looked at this comparison is March 2020, because of the COVID-19, there was a huge fall in demand for electricity since the industrial sector, the commercial sector was virtually in a lockdown mode. So we looked at the air quality index for these 2 points of time in particularly areas where there were coal-fired power plants, and you can see that there's some difference, but the main stark difference is in, so this is NOx, so we looked at SOx, NOx, but the main difference is in April, because April was a complete lockdown in India. You can see what the stark difference is, and then you can see the difference in NOx too, and similarly in May, where the lockdown was sort of lifting, you can see how there's a difference. So basically, the point that we're also trying to make is that a reduction in coal-fired power plants would also improve the air quality drastically, amongst others. Now, because of the shift, there's also been and the increased rise in renewable energy, the plant load factor of coal-fired power plants have also reduced drastically, and so in the last 5 years, the average PLF, or the plant load factor of Indian coal-fired power plants, have been anywhere in the region of about 50%, where ideally a coal-fired power plant can operate at a plant load factor of about 80 to 85%, maybe even 90% in ideal conditions. So the story here is that you keep investing on more coal-fired power plants, it will result in a lot of stranded assets. I'll come to the last slide, conclusion. So according to the Climate Action Tracker, India is one of the few countries that are in line with the 2 C temperature goal target. But of course, having said that, we have scope to do much better than what we're doing. So the reason why we are in the 2 C temperature goal in line with the 2 degree C temperature goal target is largely because of the ambitious renewable energy targets and fairly aggressive energy efficiency plan. And like I said, also the steep fall in the price of solar, coupled with the increase in price of coal. Air quality is also an issue. So, and as I said, we can do definitely beyond. And the other areas that India is also aiming to is towards an electric vehicle push. We also have a target of 30% electric mobility in India by 2030. And to conclude, the lessons for Southeast Asia is that, and there's another part of the story. While the government has announced ambitious renewable energy, it has also announced opening of a number of new coal mines. But fortunately, bankers in recent times are reluctant to fund coal anymore due to the rapid rise or increase in non-performing assets in the coal sector, because a lot of coal-fired power plants, like I showed with the PLF example, are not doing well anymore, and they're not able to pay their dues to the bankers. So the coal sector in India is fast becoming a stranded asset, and this could be a lesson to be learned by other countries. I'll stop here for now. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Srini. That was a very heartening presentation and provides hope, to some level in the sense that the transition from fossil fuels, the best case for to advocate for the transitioning from fossil fuels to clean energy, renewable energy, excluding nuclear, of course, is a hard financial and economic case. And I think India is showing that very clearly, where the financiers don't want to touch coal because it doesn't make any economic or financial sense. Fabulous. Of course, yeah. And so, we have the question panel to all the participants. So there's a question panel. So as the presentations come up, please put your questions down into that. And that also applies to our co-panelists, our fellow panelists. If you have any questions for Srini, put it down either in the chat box or and it will be conveyed onto the dashboard, which will read once all the presentations are done. So now from India, we move on to Malaysia, where we have Gurmit Singh speaking on reducing carbon in the Malaysian energy supply chain. Now, Gurmit is a lifelong environmentalist, who's currently the chairman of the Center for Environment, Technology and Development in Malaysia. And he's also the founder president of the Environmental Protection Society of Malaysia, which I currently head. He's an engineer by training and has been advocating for renewable energy for more than 40 years, and has won multiple awards for his work on the environment. And also, I must also use this opportunity to say one of the founding architects behind Climate Action Network, as well as Climate Action Network Southeast Asia. Gurmit, the floor is yours, and you will not be using any PowerPoint, right? So, yep, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not going to use PowerPoint, but basically, I think the problem is in Malaysia, really the cleaning of the supply chain is not really formally approached at all, because we have bits and pieces approach that maybe address a few aspects of the whole decarbonization issue. In the first place, the energy scene is more than electricity. It is involved things like issue of transport, especially energy that is used for transport and other purposes is very often ignored when people talk about energy. Now, in my case, I argue that we should decarbonize the whole supply chain, including non-electricity sector, wherever energy is used, even steam and all that sort of thing. But there is no official policy in this country. And there are serious attempts to develop alternatives, but to me, they are not serious enough. Because, for example, there's a bit of talk about getting new fuels for transport, but except for Sarawak, which is exploring LPG and gas, there are not really anything to take the place of oil. biogas is being promoted and biofuel from palm oil waste, but it's still not adequate. So we really don't have uh, attempts really to decarbonize the thing. And we must stop building. First thing we need to do is we need to put an end to building coal-fired power stations, despite the fact that some of the newer coal-fired power stations have higher efficiency of the turbines, but they are still coal-fired power stations. We need to put an end to this. And without that, I don't think the decarbonization effort can move very much. We have things like solar panel, some commitment for a renewable energy policy, which talks about so much of solar electricity, but these are actually quite small. We are not really tapping into biomass, especially from the palm oil industry, which is still talking about, oh, it's too difficult, too expensive to connect to the grid. This is where we need to this bring approach. The government has to intervene, and in this country, whether we like it or not, the government role is quite dominant in the whole energy scene. And there is, of course, Niti mentioned the question of energy efficiency and improving things. Yeah, there are some policies of having energy efficient equipment, electrical equipment around, but we have not really moved to the scale where efficiency, energy efficiency is right across the supply chain. For example, even a simple thing like boiling water using gas rather than electricity has not really taken off. And we only some of us do it, and everybody is switching to electricity. Has in fact has switched to electricity and wedded to electricity when uh, direct use of gas is much more efficient. People seem to forget things like, that 1 liter of fuel that we consume for our uh, vehicles drives is equivalent to 2.4 kg of CO2. And 1 unit of electricity in Peninsular Malaysia, not because of Sabah and Sarawak are quite different, although the energy mix is almost 1 kilowatt of CO2, is 1 kg of CO2. So even at the individual level, the supply chain, the energy efficiencies are not being addressed. In fact, we have been talking on and off. There is an energy efficiency organization called SEDA, which in fact should have been done by the Energy Commission, has not really helped other than producing for renewable energy, solar panel, feed-in tariff and all that. It hasn't really dramatically contributed towards energy efficiency. And the Energy Efficiency Act is still on the drawing board after previous attempts to have it in place. Now, I think we need to also talk in terms of looking at uh, non-motorized transport, for example, in the transport sector. For a long time, I've been fighting to get cycling done. There are people who are now doing cycling in a recreational way, as a luxury, but not enough people actually cycling to work. And yet, cycling for short distances is the most energy efficient form of transport that can be tackled. Then the whole question of before we can do all these energy measures, we need to do energy audits. It has started in the Green Building Index, but it's not, it has to go beyond that. Everybody at every level has to audit themselves to find out how much their energy use is, and then look at ways and means where they can cut back, decarbonize the energy itself. We should have an option for especially those who use a lot of electricity to able to get renewable energy, electricity source of renewable energy. But we don't have at the moment in the system a method to assess it, despite the slow increases of solar energy. And then we need to follow up on measures to reduce carbon footprint. We have talked about carbon footprint, but it's still very much at the individual level and still not enough at the corporate and business level. And that is where the biggest energy consumed is. So we need to develop a policy on having decarbonization. There's no policy at all in this country on decarbonization. And we don't have uh, even essentially, we talk about sustainable energy supply and all this sort of thing. But energy decarbonization has to be at the heart of sustainable energy. So I would say overall that Malaysia, the decarbonization process of the energy supply sector is still a long haul thing. It is infancy. We have achieved some things here and there, but they're all disjointed. And that is why Malaysia lacks a comprehensive, sustainable energy policy. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gurmit. Yeah, highlighting a couple of points in that when we look at energy, it's not only electricity, there's also transport. And of course, and there are also other sources for renewable energy beyond the, like you're saying, biomass and all that. And also note your point on that basically if we are trying to reduce the carbon in the energy supply chain, it has to be based in an overarching decarbonization policy, which does not exist at the moment in Malaysia. One of the points you touched on was also the importance of energy efficiency, and that provides a good segue to lead into the next presenter, who's actually going to be talking on this particular topic, which is reducing carbon in the Indonesian energy supply chain with energy efficiency and by lowering consumption. And the speaker is Diki Edwin Hindato, who's actually the chair of the governing board of Yayasan Mitra Hijau Indonesia, or Green Partner Foundation. Diki is also the founder and coordinator of the Indonesia Low Emissions Network, which has more than 150 member organizations. It was initiated last year. And he has also put forward a draft bill as one of the first actions of the Low Emissions Network. You put up a draft energy efficiency bill to the Indonesian government. So over to you, Diki, and let's hear more on energy efficiency and your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paniti, and thank you for inviting me in this very important event. And I would like to share my presentation. I have a couple of slides to be shared here. Yeah, Niti asked me to speak about reducing carbon in the Indonesia energy supply chain with energy efficiency and by lowering consumption. So I would like to present on behalf of the Yayasan Mitra Hijau. Yayasan Mitra Hijau is a national NGO that working on the Indonesia low emission development implementation. So Indonesia NDC here is widely known that we have a target 39% by 2030, and our conditional target is 41%. So if we start from this, it looks like our target is very ambitious. Yes, it is ambitious, but we also need to know that Indonesia also have a lot of opportunities to reduce the emission. So here we you can see that we have 5 sectors to be reduced: energy, waste, IPPU, agriculture, and forestry. And what we have done until now is not enough. So Indonesia has ambitious target on emission reduction, and many initiatives have been taken by government, private sector, NGO, and societies. But until now, fossil energy is still dominant, energy efficiency is still low, and forest fire and land degradation from deforestation are still occurring and hard to control for complex reasons. So, if you remember a couple of weeks ago in California, they have a red sky that everybody can see the effect of the forest fire in California. In Indonesia, we have it last year for about 2 weeks. We have the red sky because of the forest fire, uh, and we emit million tons of CO2 in the atmosphere at that time. And again, if you read carefully on our NTC, you will know that our energy, our energy uh, emission will be the highest emission uh, accelerated in 2030 compared to other sectors. So here, the energy, this is the blue one is 2010, and the green one is 2030. You can see here that based on our projection, in 2030 we will have more than 3 times of the emission of the energy emission compared to 2000, the baseline year on 2010. And in the forestry, we still have uh, not to high as the energy. I mean that the forestry will be the second. Currently, the forestry still the first emission sources in Indonesia. But soon the energy will pass the forestry. Why? Because we know that in energy it will be very dependent on the population growth and economic growth. So Indonesia population growth currently about 200 265 million people, and in 2030 it will be more than 290 million people. So you can understand the acceleration of the energy uh, emission will be pushed by the acceleration of the population and the economic growth. And we have a complete energy policy overview here. We have a primary energy supply target. We also have energy supply mix that must be done by the government and by the nation. 23% new and renewable energy by 2025, and then electrification is will be 50% from the new and renewable energy. Total installed capacity in 2040, in 2025 will be 115 gigawatt, and in 2050 it projected to 430 gigawatt. So we have done all of our homeworks here in terms of the policies and targets and everything. But until now, our national energy consumption over from 2007 to 2015, Indonesia energy intensity decreased by 21% and reached 0.084 ton oil equivalent per thousand based on PPP in 2010. So meaning that that Indonesia energy efficiency was higher than before and increasing. But our total final energy consumption also increased from 31% of 31% from 105 million ton oil equivalent 2008 to 137. So only from only 10 years, it is increased about 31%. And transport sector is the largest driver of energy consumption. So if you have visited Jakarta or any other big city in Indonesia, so you will see this situation. And this is our energy supply and demand. This is our total primary energy supply, and this is total energy consumption, and it is still increasing. And we do have our master plan of energy conservation. Our master plan of energy conservation was stipulated in 2005 and amended in 2014. The plan target is 17% of the energy saving compared to business as usual in 2025, which is equivalent to total saving about 54 million ton oil equivalent. And the master plan for energy conservation aims to achieve energy saving from of 70% from industry. Sorry, yes, 70% from industry, 20% for transport, 15% for commercial and household, and 0.5% for electricity production. So we have complete master plan as well as the implementation strategy. And this is our electricity supply comparison between 2017 and 2018. You can see here, although our energy efficiency is increased, but our electricity supply and our energy consumption was increased too. I mean that nationally, usually the increasing of the energy efficiency means that the decreasing of the energy supply, but not in Indonesia, because we still have to supply many locations that are not have electricity yet. So they still increase. And you can see here coal from 58% of the coal in 2017 is increased 59% in 2018. So almost 60% of Indonesia electricity currently are coming from coal. Yes, we do have renewable energy. We have abundant renewable energy resources, and it is estimated the potential of renewable energy is about 30 gigawatt and of geothermal and 75 gigawatt of hydropower, 19 gigawatt of mini and micro hydro, 32 gigawatt of bioenergy, and so on and so on. And of course, we have solar. We have plenty opportunities of solar implementation. But at the end of 2019, the total renewable energy installed capacity, including both on-grid and off-grid, was very small, still very small. That consists of hydropower is the biggest, about 5.4 gigawatt. Geothermal is about only 2.2 gigawatt. So you can compare it between this potential and the implementation. It is very small. But yes, we do have some targets on the renewable energy and our RUEN here. RUEN is the national planning for renewable energy and energy development here. We have detailed target on it. So in Indonesia, everything has a target, and Indonesia also we have all of the policies. We have complete policies here in Indonesia. And like this, we have a renewable energy capacity development plan from 2020 to 2024. You can imagine that, yeah, every day the minister is working to make a plan, and then they uh, push the private sector to do the implementation. But on the other hand, the coal power plant were still uh, developing. And then the pandemic hit us. And all of my stories before was changed dramatically because of the pandemic situation. So from the very uh, condensed traffic in Jakarta, traffic jam everywhere, and suddenly you can see Jakarta is like this. Currently, Jakarta is began to live again, but here is when the pandemic hit us on April to May. All of this situation is like this, and until now, all of our school children are still school from home, and our industry currently collapsed. And here, the global carbon emission following all of the pandemic, uh, Indonesia has the similar experiences compared to other countries. Here we can see that in global, we have uh, experienced the emission reduction because of the economic uh, scarcity here. And here in German, UK, Russia, and everything, uh, including Indonesia. Currently, I have uh, visited some industries in Indonesia. In the last 2 months, I have visited 5 industries in Indonesia, and all of them uh, are decreasing their production uh, more than 50%. So now we are trying to start again, to recover again, but still we have a lot of difficulties to grow. And we must face the reality of the pandemic, lack of government policies, indirect pandemic eradication, because still in the Indonesia government, they are thinking and they are still they arguing between uh, economic development or health or the pandemic eradication. And the ignorance of common people facing pandemic situation, the weak implementation of COVID-19 eradication caused by the weakening of economic and various political factors also make our lives more difficult. And here, uh, it makes the increasing number of sufferer and pandemic victim, the weakening of people purchasing power, and Indonesia are now entering economic recession. So you can see here that our pandemic situation are still growing from day to day. Until now, we have total daily infection currently is more than 4,800 people were infected every day, and it is growing from day to day. And this we believe it is just the beginning. Uh, COVID-19 will make a recession. This we have already in the recession era currently, and we will face the climate change and biodiversity collapse. And Indonesia, we are now thinking on how to do the green recovery, because for us we will need a lot of uh, financial support and a lot of government support to do the green recovery. So if we go to the greener production, not uh, to the baseline, while it is in COVID here. So we will need a lot of effort and a lot of money to do that. And based on my discussion with the Ministry of Mineral Resources and the Ministry of Industry, they are now trying to do the best to speed up the green recovery. But these 5 steps are the thing that they will do on the upcoming months. First, the effective utilization of national budget for clean energy development and the floating PV implementation in communities and state dams, solar rooftop implementation for 1 million households, green industry implementation, and new standard and regulation for energy conservation. And all of these will need the private sector's involvement. It also will need the involvement of the NGOs and GSO. And of course, the government budget are very limited after the pandemic. But what we have to now in the field, this is the private sector of Indonesia. I give you one example. What we have to before 1 or 2 years ago, previous years ago, our old style commercial building, we are, and about months ago, we are still trying to develop the green building and self-sufficient building. But currently, because of the pandemic, the building owners who has still have budget currently are trying to implement a sustainable and healthy building. So if you go to our malls, to our offices, and to our hospitals, for example, there are a very strict regulation on for the visitors and for the tenants to enter the buildings. And we do it now not like this. We do it now fully automatic, healthy, sustainable and healthy building standards. And then this is the latest, my latest slide. My last slide, and this is the latest condition of Indonesia that we have now experienced what the omnibus law ratification. So during the pandemic situation, the government of Indonesia are very confused on how to do the economic development or concentrate on the health condition. And as you know, Indonesia economic growth currently are minus 6 to 7. Yeah, minus 6 or to 7. And the government now are trying to push the economic, and they are now developing what they call the omnibus law. The omnibus law was launched on October 6, 2020, about 2 weeks ago, and it caused a lot of demonstration and massive demonstration from the students, from the industries, and from all of sectors. But government said that the omnibus law should be implemented because Indonesia will need to draw investment. The government hopes that the measure will draw investment, but the opponents, including me, said the move to self-regulation will harm workers and the environment. So government want to speed up all of the permits and license as well investment procedures, including permit for mining and electricity, and also aim at creating job opportunities. So the omnibus law was aiming to create job opportunities in all sectors, increasing investment, and everything, enhancing Indonesia SMEs ecosystem and increasing Indonesia workers' social and economic welfare. But many parties also believe that omnibus law is a reflection of the government law commitment to protect Indonesian natural resources, forest, land, and sea. So some of the negative impact of this very thick law, this omnibus law has pages more than 1,100 pages. We believe that if the omnibus law will be implemented, so the coal mine will increase the production, nuclear power development will be very easy, and uncontrolled environmental damage and domestic laboratory trending could occur in the omnibus law wrongly implemented. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present my presentation, and I would be very happy if we can discuss after this. Thank you very much, and back to you, Baniti.
Oh, you're welcome, Pak Diki. And it was good of you to bring in the dimension of COVID into the discussion and how the reduction in emissions and consumption actually provided an opportunity to transition to a clean and a green and a just normal. And yet with that potential, what you have is the omnibus law, which has the potential of shifting things in the opposite direction. As time is moving on, we will now move on to our next presentation. Also note that the questions are coming in hard and fast from the audience. So thank you all very much for that. We're just shifting the program a little. We will now have a presentation on reducing carbon emissions in Vietnam's electricity sector with 1 million solar rooftops by Mrs. Khan, who's the executive director and founder of the Green Innovation and Green Innovation and Development Center in Vietnam, who's also the winner of the prestigious Goldman Environment Award in 2019. So without further ado, over to you, Khan.
Good afternoon and hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are clear.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to share with you our initiative to contribute for low carbon emission in our most dynamic economic development region, Southeast Asia. So I was inspired a lot by the other speaker who talk about your country and also the story how India make the energy transition in just a number of years. So thank you so much for Sirinas to share with us, and also Dicky and the other to share. So for my story, we just touched on a very small corner of the story happening in Vietnam. It is about how we promote the solar rooftop sector as a contribution from the non-state actor for our green growth and energy transition in Vietnam. So I will talk more about how we accelerate the Million Green Home initiative. But before mentioning that, I also want to give some figure about the solar rooftop sector and the energy situation in Vietnam. As you may see here, over the last 2 years, Vietnam has been known as a very dynamic country with a lot of progress related to solar. You may see there are some policy progress in the solar sector, especially on the solar rooftops since 2017. So within 10 years, even it have a strategy and it also have some policy for renewable energy, but it have to wait until the government have a mechanism to support for the feed-in tariff for solar, whether ground-mounted or rooftop, connected to the grid with quite high net metering mechanism and feed with 9.35 cents per kilowatt hour connected to the grid. It helped to boom the solar sector, and that's feed-in tariff lasts for 2 years, and it come to the second round of it with lower price, 8.38 cents for solar rooftop, and 1 more cent lower for the ground mounted. But it makes the sector boom, and we has achieved a lot of records for this policy. You may see here another supporting policy follow-up after the solar rooftop feed-in tariff is in February this year. The Politburo of the Vietnam Party Committee has issued a resolution number 55. In this resolution, it also emphasized the vision and the strategy for the country to develop energy. In that resolution, it also put the priority to develop the solar rooftop sector, and also ask the government to promote and issue breakthrough policy to support for wind and the floating solar. This policy also encourages the private sector to participate in the power sector. So it not only support for the renewable energy, but it also promotes the mechanism. We see more democracy for the energy sector in Vietnam. And back to the solar rooftop, after the solar ground mounted well developed in the last year, just within 1 year, Vietnam have about 5,000 megawatt of solar. The solar rooftop also benefits from the policy, and you can see here the markets go also very fast. From like zero within more than a year, we can have about nearly 40,000 system of solar rooftop. And according to the more updated number we have now, Vietnam achieved its goal up like 1,000 megawatt of solar rooftop for the promotion program, even the program set up by the government. But it's not implemented yet, but the market has achieved this target. And the most dynamic region happened in Vietnam for solar rooftop market is in the south. You can see here with the yellow color. That is the dynamic region where a lot of industry and commercial building, they install the solar rooftop. And we see that this market still have a lot of room. And with the existing number of the solar rooftop system increase, Vietnam now have about like 1,700 megawatt peak of the total installed capacity, and it generates more than 748,000 megawatt hour, and reduce quite high nearly 7,000 tons of CO2 emission. So you see, it's the booming of the solar rooftop development after the solar ground mounted. And according to the region estimation, Vietnam have a very great potential for the solar rooftop with a total technical potential capacity of about 48,000 megawatt. I think this is quite equal to the current capacity of the power sector up to now. So this is a huge potential, and it needs further effort to explore this low-hanging fruit that now more people and company look at. That is also the reason why we at the local NGO Green ID, we initiate the idea of accelerating a target of million green home with solar rooftop. This idea started and initiated by us in 2018, just after half year the government issued the first feed-in tariff, and we set a target of achieve 1 million green home with the solar rooftop and energy efficiency by 2030. We didn't estimate the total amount of the installed capacity, but if we just estimate a minimum amount of like 3 kilowatt peak per household, we can achieve like 3 gigawatt by 2030. But we believe that this target can achieve higher. And if we can achieve this goal, it will bring benefits to not only the high income household, but also low and small, low income household community and small and medium enterprise. And our program design based on 5 pillars. We create a hub to share information, to become like online consulting information for the household and the people who interested in the solution. We also implement the communication and the pilot introduction program in different parts of Vietnam to make visualize the solution close to the eye of the people. And at the same time, we create the coalition to work together to connect supplier and consumer. And we also work with the financier, including the bank, to provide them with information and also advocate them to design the credit and loan program to support for the household who have interested in apply the model but who are lack of the finance. And we also run a national communication and advocacy to support for remove the barrier to support the household to be able to implement the solution. That is how we run the program since the beginning. And this is the diagram showing the portal, the information hub we are design and we also operate to support for the people. And you can see here in our information hub, it connects supplier with customer, and it also facilitate the financier with the community. We aim to connect the need and become the match makings between the supplier and the consumer. We also do a lot of communication and awareness raising activity. We have a fan page to provide daily support for the people. We also work in both conventional and innovative way for communication to provide information for the people. And we are running the demonstration sites in different parts of Vietnam, from the north to the south and the center. And the more important here is we to be able to accelerate the program. We set up the Solar Ambassador group, and through the pilot program, we create this group to build the capacity for the group to become the ambassador and who will based in the community to help the customer to get the information and to connect with the networks of supplier. So in our program, we are not only focused on the urban city, but we also work to support for the vulnerable community, the off-grid community, through different fundraising program and also the CSR program to connect the off-grid community with the supporter and also the solution. We, as a small group, now working in a remote area in the border of Vietnam and Cambodia. And by the end of next year, we will aim to achieve about 1,000 households in the off-grid area to have the power from the solar, with the solar system. Here is some image about the activity we has implemented. Yes, so we people to become the installer beside the communication activity. This is the community who apply for the solar rooftop. We also combine the solution with the water to ensure that the system can maintain itself by the local group. And we also work with the school because we believe that the school is also a way to spread the message faster, and it have to bring the knowledge down to the people and the community. However, during the program we implemented, we also witnessed a lot of challenge. In Vietnam, when we started, the policy is very short term and it's not give like a long vision to encourage the people, the household and the investor. That is the reason why we have to continue to advocate for a continuous support program for the solar rooftop to ensure the people will benefit from this transition. And currently the government also do not have a standard for the solar rooftop system. It makes people worry when thinking about what is good quality with the reasonable price. So we have to work together with association and also build up on the experience to help the local people. And a lot of people still do not have the appropriate information about the solution yet. So we recognize that more work needs to be done on the communication and awareness raising campaigns to help for the people to understand the opportunity bring from this distributed renewable energy solution. That is the lead of recommendation we see and we have in our work. We see that to be able to promote this market, it needs long-term policy to be able to ensure that people well understand and have enough time to join. And we also have to play multiple tasks at the same time to connect, to mobilize finance, and especially to support for lending mechanism from the bank, to connect the bank with the customer and also connect the customer with the supplier. And technical standard for solar rooftop to help people believe on the quality. It also another task. It requires more association to join beside the government, and awareness raising, increase the awareness of the people to help them well understand the solution and also the barrier is also very important. And we see that luckily that in Vietnam, the utility Vietnam EVN now are support for this solution, but the knowledge to transfer to the people is a big gap that we can play a role. And that is the reason why we have to focus on building the ambassador network nationwide to be able to apply the market-based approach to support for this solution. And communication, nowadays we have to combine both online and offline tools to be able to make the markets available and also make the people benefits from this distributed renewable energy resources. So that is the experience from us of how we support for people to join in the energy transition and benefits from this. Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kain. And yeah, it shows that we, with a good overarching regulatory and policy framework, that you have actually made good progress with rooftop solar from the industrial and now even to the domestic sector. Of course, one always looks for improvements, and you have come up with a very comprehensive set of recommendations as well as to how you can advance this. And it shows how all the solutions are there available to replace reliance on just solely relying on fossil fuels for electricity supply. So with that, thank you very much. And then now I will move on to the final speaker of our session, Redo Panaligan, who's the president of the Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainable Technology, who will be talking on speeding up low carbon energy transition via distributed renewable energy. Over to you, Ray.
Okay, thank you, Niti, and good day, everyone. I hope you can see my screen. So again, thank you for the first speakers, and it's very informative and I learned a lot as well. So I would like to share to you now is our own analysis on how distributed renewable energy, particularly solar rooftop, can be a catalyst to speed up energy transition in the Philippines. When we say distributed energy, these are decentralized energy systems that are usually small in capacity, grid connected, or interlinked by various distribution devices. So a quick introduction. So CREST is we're a think organization. One of our main partners are cities and communities. That's why we build our expertise on small-scale renewable energy systems and microgrids. I would like to give you a brief context of our power sector. Of course, the Philippines, we are one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change impacts. And the power sector is one of the heavily affected sector. During extreme typhoons, millions of power assets are destroyed, and it took weeks or even months to fully restore electricity distribution. We have also one of the highest electricity rates in Asia, primarily because coal dominates the power generation mix, and more than 70% of our coal demand are imported. As you can see here, we have 44.8% in the coal in the energy mix as compared to 21% of renewable energy. And in the end, energy security in the country and reliance remains very low, and more than 10 million Filipinos remain without access to electricity. But if you can see on the right side, high solar resource, and many parts of the country have more than 4 hours of peak sun. Our solar resource alone is practically unlimited. In 2008, the country also implemented renewable energy law to fully speed up renewable energy programs in the country. But despite all of these realities, our energy regulators and planners continue to favor baseload plants, particularly coal. As you can see in this Philippine Energy Plan, coal will remain the king in both scenarios projected by the Philippine government. On the left side, this is the business as usual reference scenario where coal will remain the dominant with a share of 55%. And then on the right side, this is the clean energy scenario in which, again, coal will remain the dominant in terms of power and energy source. So I would like to share to you a typical 24-hour weekday electricity demand of the main island of Luzon. As you can see, 70% of the demand, which is the color gray, this is addressed by the baseload plants or plants that should run 24/7. This is dominated by coal. The demand during peak hours, which usually starts 7 in the morning, the color green, until the evening, are addressed by what we call flexible plants. These are the plants that can be turned on and off at any given time. Now, under the RE law, variable plants such as solar and wind gets priority dispatch. If 5% of solar enters the electricity mix, it shapes some of the demands during peak hours. And this is very helpful because peak running flexible plants and peaking plants are very expensive. As more solar enters the electricity mix, more demands during peak hours get shaped. Now, at 20% solar penetration, this becomes more interesting. As you can see in the graph, the solar demand already reached the upper tip of the baseload demand. Grid operators will now curtail additional solar to ensure grid stability. Now enters distributed RE. Unlike solar farms and parks, regulators cannot curtail solar rooftop. Regulators cannot stop consumers to put their own solar rooftop at their own home, office, and buildings to reduce their high electricity demand and expenses. So what happened when solar penetrates reach 25%? Grid operators will be forced to curtail baseload supply. As more solar penetration, the lesser the demand for baseload plants such as coal, and making these baseload plants practically stranded assets. So as you can see, as more and more solar enters the electricity mix, the role of baseload plant diminishes. And in a future of cheap renewable energy, we see less role of baseload plants such as coal and even nuclear, but higher roles for variable plants and flexible plants. And the reality is that here in the Philippines, the feed-in tariff and the RE law only provides incentives for utility-scale renewable energy such as solar. But we see a continuing price drop in terms of the technology, especially for solar. And we see that currently renewable energy is now market-driven, and it will be beyond the control of energy regulators anymore. As you can see here, solar and battery price continues to decline every year. And the growth of solar rooftop is now driven by the desire of consumers to address high electricity costs and also do climate action. So in the Philippines, not only that solar rooftop already achieved grid parity, but it is now the cheapest source of electricity for consumers. A new paradigm is now happening. And actually this transition, we have seen this in the information sector. Before, the big players in the computer industry are the mainframes. But the economy of size was replaced by economy of scale, where computers become smaller and cheaper, that it can be afforded by many people and not only by big corporations. We see a similar trend in the power sector, and it will be forced by favorable market and increasing innovations on small-scale renewable energy. In a future of clean energy, coal will have no place, and even other baseload plants such as nuclear. It will be dominated by a combination of variable plants, flexible plants, and distributed renewable energy systems. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ray, for that interesting discussion, the interesting presentation. And now we will go on straight to the questions. I had some plan to ask some questions as introductory. We have a wide range of questions from the audience. So what I'll do is I will apportion the question according to the people they've been targeted at, as well as some other questions which may be technical and general in nature, where the likes of Ray and Gurmit and Dicky can come and answer whether, the engineers amongst us. So maybe you all can have a pen and paper as I rapidly read through the questions. Srini, these are the questions which are directed to you. NDCs with a rating of 2 degrees compatible are consistent with the 2009 Copenhagen 2 degree centigrade Celsius goal, but are not fully consistent with the Paris Agreement long-term temperature goal of 1.5 degrees. This is just a comment. And then a follow-up question is, with the surge of new opening for coal mines in India, how would India achieve India's NDC, tackling the shift of financial institutions towards supporting green initiatives and environmental impacts such as carbon emissions. Okay, those are specific to you. Now, Gurmit, if you could just make a note of these.
Sorry.
Yeah, Gurmit, if you could make a note of this. What kind of vital and sustainable approaches are required to get the community to totally understand the clean energy, to understand clean and green energy usage? And then there's another question to you. What are the main challenges to Malaysia in achieving decarbonization, tackling the main industry carbon emitters? How can Malaysia do better? And there's one more, which is, has Malaysia explored all the options potentially available on our hand? Is energy monopoly and price control restrictive creative investment in this sector? Has an artificial control or low price in energy retarded efforts to encourage wide usage or implementation of better RE resources? And there's also a question on, are there any incentives from the government for rooftop solar for houses? I guess that could also be applied. I think Malaysia, Vietnam, I think you went through for Malaysia. I'll stop here and then I'll direct the other questions to Vicky and Ray. So, Srini, you'd like to start first?
Yeah, sure. I completely agree that that India will have to do a lot more to be 1.5 degrees C temperature goal compliant. And that's what I said in my presentation. We have made a beginning, but we have miles to go, is what I remember having said. So from our point of view, yes, we, while we encourage the government to on these ambitious reforms, we also want pushing them to go further. There was another point that Gurmeet made in his presentation, that when you talk of NDC, you shouldn't be talking of electricity generation alone. You should talk about the overall energy pathway. And that's precisely where we are also pushing the government to look at overall energy. So it's not just shifting from coal for electricity generation, but it's shifting from fossil fuel for the energy use. So yes, to answer your question in short, it was a comment, not a question. The beginning. So why is it important that, that India has 2 degrees C compliant? It is important because you must realize that India till about 5, 6, 7 years back was fossil fuel dominant, and that is slowly changing. Even now we are fossil fuel dominant, but that situation is changing, and so there's a beginning made somewhere. So that's why it is important. But having said that, should we rest on our achievements? No, we should go further, and that's the answer to your question. Now, on the new coal mines, yes, you are absolutely right. So let me sort of give you a little bit of a background to it. So in the aftermath of COVID, what really happened was, with a lot of industries in the commercial segment shutting down, virtually coming to a halt for a period of almost 2 months, whole of April, whole of May, a lot of workers, laborers, who migrated from their hometown in search of jobs to industrially rich states and cities, lost your job, and there was a whole lot of reverse migration. And the reverse migration were to cities, were to towns, villages, which also had a lot of coal mines, or coal, which has coal resources, let me put it that way. So the government came up with this plan saying that, why don't we reduce our imports of coal, our dependence of coal from Indonesia, Australia, and so on and so forth, and increase the domestic production of coal, and so that it would meet the requirement of our of the Indian coal-fired power plants, and B, it would address the issue of employment. But having said that, what really is happening is that there are not many new coal-fired power plants that are coming up, because bankers are not willing to fund coal-fired power plants anymore, because of the bad track record of the paying capacities of coal-fired power plants to banks. So our hope is that with these opening of new mines too, it will, while it might support existing coal-fired power plant, it is not going to push the setting up of new coal-fired power plants. That's our hope. And gradually, as the renewables increase, some of those old coal-fired power plants will be retired and gradually phased out. That's how we are hoping that things would pan out. And that's what we are pushing for as environmentalists.
Thank you, Srini, and thank you to Anna Chapman from Climate Analytics and Yiling from Malaysian Nature Society for the questions. Gurmit, can you respond to the questions directed at you?
Okay, I will try to take the first one on the community. I think getting the community involved in this whole energy issue is a real problem because they have been, our environmental awareness is very weak, and the community don't really even bother to find out the difference between different forms of energy. What more, how to get them to talk about where is the carbon content of the energy and how do you decarbonize it. So I think there's a heck of a problem. And even among the NGOs, not very many NGOs work on energy in the first place in this country. And those of us who are working on it have our problems of we are stretched too thin. And we can't tackle all these issues together. Speaking of SETDEM itself, SETDEM is a small organization. And with this COVID thing, we have been badly affected. We are even without a general manager. And so we are trying to improvise things. Now, the other thing is, there's no host. What is this video thing being asked for? Oh, my video. I don't know what the video is meant to be. Okay. I've started the video. Anyway, the point is that we need a lot of work to be done, and I really would appreciate that the people will come on board and address the community that way. Now, on the question of using market mechanisms or market incentives, market pricing to incentivize renewable energy, I think the problem really is we need to remove fossil fuel subsidies. We basically are subsidizing. There was a case at one stage where the government was trying to remove subsidies for different things, even for fuel and all that. But that withered out. So what we really need to remove the subsidies we give for fuel and think of some other ways. For example, fishermen are given subsidies for the oil that they buy. There was talk by the previous government of subsidizing the fuel that poor people use. I think there are different ways of helping that, but not by subsidizing. I think the whole issue of subsidies of fuel have to be removed. And in Malaysia, petroleum, because we were built on the fact that petroleum is our basic thing, we were exporting petroleum, we were exporting country, we need to make sure that petroleum was cheap. And now people cannot move away from this mentality of cheap petroleum. They're still wedded onto it. So I think we really have to remove the subsidy element. And in the case of renewable energy, we have to think in terms of incentivizing it in some other forms. Giving them a cross subsidy, I think, will not really work. What was the third question?
There was a question about incentives for solar rooftop.
What?
Incentives for solar rooftop.
No, the question is there is a feed-in tariff that was already there. The feed-in tariff has now been lifted because the solar panels are meeting a parity level. So there's no more subsidy level. So they are now talking of a net metering system. So the net metering system is available. But somehow that is not enough to motivate people. There are people who are willing to do it, but not enough. So what is happening now is there is more people investing in solar farms. These are going on a tender basis. So we do not know how competitive is this tendering basis. Because if this tendering basis is not competitive, then you will revert back to the way the previous power station contracts are given, like direct negotiation. And that definitely will not help solar. Now, I think I want to point out that one of the things that we really lack is wind power. There is no way Malaysia can harness wind power. There's a lot of misguided money being spent on research and misguided wind power. We are in the doldrums. We are in the area of the doldrums where there's no real wind power. So what we need to do is we need to talk about biomass. We need to talk about biomass to supply a base load factor. That's why I was talking of palm oil waste. That effluent is lying there and it's not being adequately addressed. They combined with solar cannot supply you the base load, as was pointed out by some of the speakers. Biomass can provide you the biomass, plus other things. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Now these are two questions directed at, have been requested to wrap up in 20 minutes so that the next session can come on. So I'm clustering all these questions and having it in a rapid fire style. But Diki, these were the two questions addressed to you, and then I'll list the other questions where Ray and Khan and others may want to take on. There's a question that I heard that petrol subsidy in Indonesia was cut as the government found most of it was going to the rich. But did you see the impacts to GSG emissions, but also maybe negative impacts to the poor? That was one question to you. And then there was another question on any incentive. Oh, there's another question on why the potential continuity of the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. In your opinion, is solar? Sorry. Yeah, in your opinion, is Indonesia and or Southeast Asia able to continue to stay sustainable and resilient in economic developments in the combination of environmental protection and conservation? These are questions here from Ian and Zara Pang. And then I have some general questions which maybe the engineers may be interested in, which is, what are the policies? Sorry, it's a little tricky here. Yeah, what are the policies or action plans which have been put in place that actually incentivize the consumers to shift from conventional energy to renewable energy, especially for countries with a single unit entity company that monopolizes the utility market? What are the initiatives that should be put in place in Indonesia, PLN, in Vietnam, EVN, in Malaysia, TNB, in Philippines, Meralco? So that's a very relevant question. And then there's another question on should the government revamp current LSS building projects? Should further expedite more LSS projects to replace dirty power plants as accelerated rate. Power buying rate should be determined via demand supply dynamics. I think current LSS is too low and too small. The size for each LSS should be much bigger and encompass many RE resources. Of course, I'm reading that not knowing what LSS means.
Hi,
Yeah.
Niti. Hi, Niti.
Yep.
Yeah, I think because if it go on along the long question, it's hard for us to remember.
Sorry.
I suggest that we should focus on on some, then we go like.
I understand. Okay, Diki, you remember the two questions to you, right?
Almost. So yeah, first is about the
Sorry about that.
The situation and the COVID and regarding the renewable energy and energy efficiency. Yes, currently we have still experiencing the COVID and pandemic. But again, here in Indonesia, the government have more emphasis on the economic rather than health. So we have now many stimulus in industry and in SME, small and medium enterprises, but unfortunately not in renewable energy or energy efficiency. So the stimulus from the government are from direct money and some of the tax exemption, and the others are uh, the simplification of procedures and permits on how to develop uh, the new investment. So here, what we don't have is and renewable energy and energy efficiency that are very specific on this. So I'm worried that if the pandemic is over, so we will have um, go to the business as usual, not to the green. And yeah, we have uh, omnibus law that now will be implemented if everybody agree. And in omnibus law also we push the utilization of the coal. Uh, and it make me very worried about the future of the renewable energy in Indonesia. And of course, we still have some targets on renewable energy, but mainly because there are a lot of difficulties on the implementation of this is also will regard to your question, latest question on the single buyers. So and it is will be very difficult for the government to give subsidy for the feed-in tariff, for example. So they now developing the green fuel. The green fuel are coming from the palm oil, and the situation in Indonesia. We have now more than 12 million hectares of palm oil, and because of pandemic situation, the demand of the palm oil are decreasing very much, and the Europe and some countries currently are opposing the Indonesia palm oil, including Malaysia palm oil. So we will try to use the palm oil as our source of green fuel, not only for the diesel fuel, well, not only for the green diesel, but for the gasoline. So this is the problem in Indonesia, as we have everything. We have uh, all of the renewable energy resources, but we also have a lot of coal, and we also have gas and oil. So the decision will be on the government on how to put the uh, prioritization on the green or in the brown energy. So that's my answer.
Thank you, Dicky. Because of the time constraint, I'm just going to ask one more question, in which I hope Ray and Khan will answer. But we assure everyone that for all the questions, the other questions which are not answered abroad, we will send it to the panelists and then collect their responses and send it back to you as email responses. So I will assure you of that. So what I'll do is, with the final question to wrap up for this afternoon, maybe Khan and Ray can take the first crack, and if there's time, maybe Gurmit and Vicky can join in. And the question is, what are the policies or action plans that have been put in place that actually incentivize the consumers to shift from conventional energy to renewable energy? especially for countries with a single unit or entity or company that monopolizes the utility market? What are the initiatives that could be put in place? Now, as I had said earlier, this is relevant for a region because we have EVN, PLN, Meralco, TNB. So maybe Ray, Khan, would you like to answer first? What are the incentives for
Maybe I want to go first. Ray, can you allow me? I think that yeah, that question is super important for on our region. So learning from what happened in Vietnam, I want to share some of our thought about what should be put in the policy and also how civil society can contribute for that. So regarding the policy, you see that Vietnam also have a single buyer utility is EVN. At the beginning, EVN is not willing to buy or are not so relaxed with the feed-in tariff mechanism. But that changed over the 2 years. Why? First, because I think that the information from the society and from the markets create a pressure for the utility and for the government. When it shows that this kind of energy is it's not expensive, and it also helps the country to have a new power from clean side and cheap. So why we do not go with that? I think that is it needs the effort from civil society to build up the knowledge of the society, both the officer and the citizen on the issue. That is important to support for the policy change. And secondly, with a single monopoly buyer, the policy is very important. When the government have a policy that every single power from solar rooftop had to be priority to connect it to the grid. So they have to. And then in one day, they also recognize that, oh, this is good because they have the mandate to ensure the sufficient power supply for the country. And without additional new power from coal, where they can got it. So I think that it also shows that it's not only good for investor, for household, but also for the national grid, because they can have the power, and also it also not create any burden for their investment on the grid expansion. So those points need to be communicated to reach to the table of the policymaker. But at the same time, it's also a way to educate the utility too. They've come from deny to be opened, and now they accept it. And they also now have a program. They set up a platform, yeah, to connect the supplier and the customer, but for the big supplier and big customer. I think that is how we see the change happen in Vietnam. But from the civil society, when we walk down in the community, we see that a huge need for the capacity building and awareness raising to help people understand the opportunity and take it. So I think that is, I think incentivize from policy is the feed-in tariff, or maybe the mechanism to allow for like net metering. Yeah, net metering is important, and also maybe a good price for a certain period of time to incentivize the investment. But also from the finance side, it also go along to support for the need of the customer, because I think that is a huge market for the banking sector. That is the retail market for them too. So in Vietnam nowadays, some banks are like discussing with us to see how they can join in this market. Yeah.
For the Philippines, actually, we have the renewable energy law. it has some incentives actually there that gives consumers, for example, the green energy option. Consumers have the capacity or ability to source its electricity from renewable energy sources. We also have net metering, and we also have feed-in tariff, but feed-in tariff is only for utility scale, and currently feed-in tariff for solar and wind are already suspended. But the problem is that all of these incentives are not yet fully enforced. But however, as based on my presentation earlier, you don't need incentives actually. Even though we don't have any incentives currently in the Philippines for consumers, we still see a growth on solar rooftop industry. Precisely because of different factors, climate awareness, high electricity rates, and also the goal of every family is to achieve energy security, especially during typhoons and brownouts and everything else. So, of course, incentives will help, but as we have seen, the transition from the mainframe to a micro paradigm that happened in the information sector. Baseload plants will be replaced by small-scale distributed renewable energy system. It's already happening in the future of cheap renewable energy.
Thank you very much, Ray. In the interest of time, we will wrap it up here and assure everyone who had questions which were not answered, they will be followed. They will be followed up. Just to inform everyone that for those who had questions which were not answered, they will be circulated to all the panelists here. And once all the answers or responses are compiled, we will send it to you. We have your contact details, and I will assure you that that will happen. I just, in conclusion, I just like to say that we had a very rich and diverse discussion. And this was reflected in the wide range of questions we received. It was really a real privilege for me to facilitate this discussion with this stellar panel from across our region as well as India. And I think one very clear outcome of this forum is that it's proven without any doubt that the clean energy potential in Southeast Asia and India is tremendous. There is a huge opportunity out there. So it should be institutionalized, in terms of, energy transition away from fossil fuels should really be institutionalized into what, like what Gurmit refers to as a decarbonization policy for all our countries. That will then provide the overarching policy framework for us to make the shift, which we have to, in the interest of climate change and the Paris Agreement and the threat which we face under the planet. So I think the evidence is very clear with the excellent examples coming out of the Philippines and Vietnam and Malaysia and India and Indonesia. There's a lot of avenue for us to move forward, to really harness the green potential which is available to us. So with that, I will sort of formally conclude the session. Of course, before I end it, I have to thank our stellar panel, my colleague Nikki Edwin Hindato from Indonesia, Srinivas Krishnaswamy from India, Gurmit Singh from Malaysia, Kain from Vietnam, and last but not least, of course, Redo Panaligan from the Philippines. We also express our appreciation to IGEM 2020, the Malaysian Green Technology Center, as well as the Ministry of Environment and Water for giving the Malaysian Climate Change Group, which is the member of Climate Action Network Southeast Asia in Malaysia, this opportunity to organize this climate action forum in conjunction with IGM 2020, in which we organized 13 events. I think it's the first of its kind. So we are very appreciative of this opening which has given to us, which has enabled us to organize wonderful events like the one we just had today. Also like to thank the technical staff from CUBE who have been supporting us and sending us messages, supporting this whole session, providing the technical support to this session. Most importantly, the fantastic audience we've had out there, this very energetic and participative audience who have actually, who listened very carefully and came in with the questions hard and fast. So thank you all also for your participation, which has contributed to the success of this event. So with that, on behalf of Climate Action Network Southeast Asia, on behalf of Environmental Protection Society Malaysia, and behalf of the Malaysian Climate Change Group, thank you all very, very much for your participation today. And have a great day going forward and have a great weekend. Goodbye, everyone.